Next, we are going to have Yema Juliet Siddiq, who is a management analyst and founder of Project Womb. She's going to be talking to us about information sourcing. Thank you, Yema.
Thank you, Auntie Unakushe. Good evening. My name is Yema Juliet Lamine Siddiq, and today I just want to talk to you about reliable information sources. With so much new information continuously evolving around COVID and still so much uncertainty, understandably, we want to keep our family, friends, and loved ones as up to date as possible. But with WhatsApp, Facebook, and other social media outlets, it's very easy for the fast spread of false information. That's very common and something we've been seeing frequently throughout this pandemic since its beginning. And while sometimes our intentions are completely harmless and we're just trying to keep everyone as up to date as possible, it can be really dangerous instead of helpful when people are receiving instructions that are false about evidence-based public health interventions. And so it's absolutely imperative to make sure that your information and sources are accurate prior to sharing them. So today I just want to speak to you briefly about how to make sure we're spreading accurate information. Next slide, please. So some really credible sources just that are organizations, the WHO, the World Health Organization, as well as CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, these are really good organizations because essentially they have an obligation to give us up-to-date and accurate information. State and local government websites as well, local news information sources. The WHO more so provides recommendations for the world, so on an international recommendation basis. And it may not exactly be too specific to the US sometimes, which is when we want to go to the CDC or we want to go to the National Institutes of Health, NIH. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, can you go back 2 more slides? So I just want to talk about knowing the logos. Knowing the logos basically meaning when something is verified or not, because a lot of what we'll see is false information that comes from something that looks like it's a credible source, but it's really actually not. So one way that I do it to help me sometimes is to look for the blue check, especially on social media. If you're just looking for something very quickly, you want to look for the blue check. You want to, of course, check the original source from your forwarded messages. A lot of us are getting tons and tons, hundreds of messages on Facebook from worried family members, you know, back home in Salone or even just here because we're not really sure what's going on and because of the uncertainty. So sometimes it can be hard to filter exactly what is true and what's not. And so one really good way to do that is to just go to Google and try to find that source and where it came from. Visit your local and state health department websites. And if you can't get to their websites, go to their social media. Again, familiarize yourself with these logos because it really comes in handy in terms of using it against false propaganda out there. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I just really briefly want to show what a verified organizational account would look like. One thing that I was very surprised to see that I've been seeing pretty frequently is that sometimes you'll see a verification from something that looks like it's the WHO or looks like it's the CDC, and you'll see sort of like a blue check copied and pasted into what would be the display picture. But a great way to make sure that you're on a site that has credible sources is to make sure it's next to the name, which a lot of people might sometimes get confused about. Next slide, please. So just want to provide about 7 tips for avoiding misinformation, some of which I've already gone over. But again, learn the basics of the disease. We've gone over the symptoms. So what are the symptoms? How does this spread? We've talked about the spread. What illnesses are similar to COVID? So knowing the difference between seasonal allergy symptoms and COVID symptoms, and when to call your doctor. This is information that can actually arm you against the misinformation that's coming in from all sorts of ways. Be wary of claims that be wary of claims about the pandemic that don't really seem to right if you can't find it on Google. We've seen a lot of politicizing of COVID from, the right and the left. It's again really important to be aware of those conspiracies and making sure that you're going to actual credible sources of information. Go to a government organization site or go to your local and state government website, or if you have a trusted doctor, maybe try to call your doctor and go there and see if they can provide you verification for the information that you're getting. Verify images and videos related to the pandemic. Again, it's really easy to push out misleading context, especially in a time like this when people know what about the large fear that's going on. It's really easy to push inaccurate propaganda out there. One thing that I do want to point people to is if you Google WHO Mythbusters, it's sort of a good forum site to check and see if your information is actually accurate. Use reverse image search. That is also another good route to check your information. Don't share prevention or treatment methods without consulting official sources first. And of course, still make sure you're looking for what's unknown. And this next slide, I just wanted to point out that, again, there are lots of myths coming. One major one is that, if you're somewhere really hot or sunny, that you can't catch COVID. You absolutely can. It's a fact that most people who do catch COVID-19 will recover from it. But again, it's a very real disease. And that is probably another thing that I really want to stress is that even exposing yourself to the sun or very warm temperatures isn't necessarily going to prevent nor cure you from COVID. So once more, if you don't know where your information is coming from, before you send it out, before you send out inaccurate public health interventions strategies, please check to see where the source is coming from. You can always do a simple Google search. You can check your local and state government websites, and that should help you out a lot more and greater help everybody else out so we can tackle this thing.